consider starting at a different time, whether or not.
It's just a question.
I don't know that the actual length is something that we can necessarily put an accurate time frame on. I think is one of the difficulties. So at the risk of going late,
No, that's good.
what's everybody's thoughts on concerning a time change? Are we happy with the way that it is, or consider that as well? I'm not seeing a lot of hands at home. One last call, Chief Gowdy.
So I was just checking your procedural bylaw 370. It does specify a 5 p.m. start time for council meetings. It does not contain any specific time for council committee meetings. So you would be free to select a different time should council elect to.
So, Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I'm fine with the 5 o'clock. I don't know why we would change it all of a sudden. So it's fine for me.
Not seeing a lot of other input.
Oh,
I'm sorry. That darn background in your camera there, your hand disappeared. Sorry about that. Councillor Hoekstra, go ahead. Here you go.
Volume.
You're on mute.
I would appreciate a 6 o'clock start.
Very good. So are you proposing that as?
Do you have to make the true motion?
You'll have to make an amendment.
Amendment.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'd like to propose an amendment for the March, pardon me, what's the date? Meeting to be started at 6 p.m. instead of 5.
Okay. Any further discussion on that item? So with respect to the amendment, according for the time of the March first meeting, to move it from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. I will call the question. All those in favor? That is carried.
Now I have to vote on my motion.
Exactly. And with respect to the motion as brought forward by Councillor Hibbs for a council meeting to take place on March 5th, and it will be at 6 p.m. now. Should it pass? All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, I think that was unanimous as well. So 6 p.m. it is. And time frame wise, we've got a bit of time here left. So
CO Gowdy has his arm up.
the Chief Gowdy.
My apologies, Mayor Creasy. Thank you for your patience as we work through this. I would maybe recommend considering item 5.5 and or 5.6 as potential agenda items prior to the public hearing.
Right, and that's why I was going to go to 5.6. I'm not sure that we'll necessarily have enough time for 5.5, but 5.6 I would think we perhaps could. So I would ask that you start off item 5.6 for us, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will start off with item 5.6, which is a discussion of the administrative services provided to the Lacombe Police Service. This was an item that was requested of administration following our most recent council deliberations. During these deliberations, it became apparent that the information technology services recovery had been functioning as a catch-all for the services provided from administration to the Lacombe Police Service. Rather than have that as a one lumped item, council requested that we create an inventory of services that are provided and possibly look at a different way to represent the cost of that transfer. So what we've got before you is a full listing of the services that are provided administratively to the Lacombe Police Service, and a recommendation, excuse me, a recommendation that in the future, this be represented as an administrative recovery rather than an information services recovery, and that the cost be allocated as 3.95% of total expenses, which is roughly equivalent to what it is today. This will provide stability and transparency for the police service and administration, and year over year stability in the overall transfer. This has been an item of some contention in the past between the police service and the city, and this will remove some aspect of that uncertainty for the Lacombe Police Service as they go through budgeting. So our recommendation is for you to accept this report as information and to direct administration to prepare future budgets as described in this memorandum, identifying an administrative support recovery in the amount of 3.95% of total expenses of the Lacombe Police Service.
Thank you, Chief Gotti. Anyone care to start? So as far as the naming of this particular line item, I think it's certainly been an issue in the past, suggesting that the entire amount was somehow related to IT services, and I think that hopefully everyone has come to realize, all involved, that in fact it encompasses far more than that. So I think that's an appropriate naming of it. We have a motion in our midst. Councillor Connick, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Just for my own clarification then, so there'll still be an IT services recovery line item, but that's strictly related to monies put aside for capital as it relates to IT, and then there's going to be an administrative services recovery line item and where everything else will get lumped into. Is that correct, CEO Gotti?
Chief Gotti?
Yes, that is correct, Councillor Connick. So there still will be this sort of catch-all aspect, the administrative services recovery, that is going to be still a bit of a black box of different services, if you will. But the IT services recovery would be much clearer, and you're exactly right. It would be related only to the 10-year capital expenditures that the police department foresaw in the IT area. So things like servers, computers, cell phones, which in the past there hasn't really been many questions about that, because it's very easy to follow the math. I think the difficult part has been once you start looking at the non-capital item, the operating costs, that's when a lot of questions start to arise about value and about what's really being provided for that $200,000 or so.
Chief Gotti, you had also mentioned that that percentage amount, around 4%, was it? I think that it referred to. Has that been a fairly stable figure over the last number of years?
Unfortunately, I mean, I guess, yes, it has been somewhat stable, but unfortunately, one of the challenges that the police service has had to deal with is fairly high fluctuations in the IT recovery. So I would say if we were to go over the past 5 years, it's probably varied anywhere between 3.5% and 4.5% on a given year.
That's more what I was looking for. So that's a fairly accurate representation, I would expect then, with the figure that you arrived at. Okay. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. So just to follow up, I know the Police Commission is meeting, I think it's next week. I have to look at my calendar. Will you provide this, should it pass tonight, to them, or did you want me to bring it forward? I'm assuming CEO Gotti, you'll bring this to them.
Yes, we will definitely forward this both to the police chief and the police commission as well, to make sure they have a copy. I did discussed this item with the chief of police prior to tonight's meeting. So he is aware that it's going forward. And I think, I mean, I didn't get his stamp of approval or anything, but nor did I receive any concern from him. So I don't think it'll be a surprise by any imagination.
So we have a motion in our midst. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Crease. I'll make the motion that council direct administration. What the heck? Oh, that's right. That's a recommended motion, correct? The council direct administration to prepare future budgets as described in this memorandum, identifying an administrative support recovery in the amount of 3.95% of total expenses.
Very good. Is everybody clear on that? Any additional input? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that was unanimous, I believe. So we, I think we might just as well proceed on to item 5.5 if Director Thompson is ready to go. If we have to cut it short, and we will do so to keep our schedule with our public hearing presentations. Director Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council tonight is a bit of a summary on an alternative access option for the snow storage facility and East Recreation Area project. As council will recall, in the fall, we presented an option to build an access road to allow city crews to access a former sewer lagoon and repurpose it as a snow storage facility, but also utilize that same access road to allow public access to a newly created East Recreation Area. With the benefit of some additional time, administration has looked at another option that provides access to a new storage facility on the lagoon site, as well as public access to that East Recreation Area in a way that is cheaper, more cost effective, and overall is more, I think, more palatable for public use. In the council report, we identify 3 options. Option 1 is the original option that shares the access road via the existing gravel road on the lagoon site. Option 2 is the new option. That option is significantly cheaper. It's about $300,000 cheaper based on our engineer's estimates. And what that allows us to do is to repurpose some of those funds or reallocate those funds to the Highway 12 project, which council authorized for usage of the stimulus funding for the province. Option 2, the benefits of option 2 include separating recreation user traffic. It provides a dedicated entrance to the new recreation area that is more recognizable to residents. And it potentially increases traffic flow to the area, which has some economic development benefits. The downside to option 2 is there's no natural outlet for the cell, the snow storage cell. And so we are looking at how to manage, if we have to manage water that sits in that cell. It may require pumping in a heavy snow year, but it may also evaporate over time. And so we have anticipated say a rather conservative number of about $5,000 per year to rent a pump and pump water out of that cell if required. Option 3 is presented in the memo is essentially option 2, but removing the access road to the future recreation area. And so this option certainly still achieves the objective of providing the snow storage facility, but it eliminates the scope of the recreation area development of the project and reallocates the funds to the remaining funds to the Highway 12 project. And so administration is recommending option 2. as the best option moving forward. And we're looking for council's decision on that tonight.
Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Option 2 on our plans here doesn't show access to the lagoons. Does it continue north? You have an access road on the north end of the one lagoon, but there's no access to cell 5 or whatever that is over there in the corner. I'm not sure. Like it just shows it going part way up and then it stops at the recreation area.
I see what you're, okay. Director Thompson?
So option 2 is actually 2 separate entrances. One option, the entrance to the recreation area is via the undeveloped, or would be via the undeveloped road allowance off of 53rd Avenue in the Wolf Creek Industrial Park. Then the separate access to the east cell of the lagoon is by a separate access directly off 34th Street on the east side of that of the lagoon cell. So it should show up on the report as a separate access entitled option 2/3.
Yes, and it does as well. So thank you for that.
Can I do
Go
that?
ahead.
Thank you. So we're changing the location of the snow storage then to that other cell? Is that correct?
That is correct. That's the proposal. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So further to Councillor Gullickson, and then later on this evening in camera, we're talking about lagoons as well. And that item identifies that particular cell being used by that proponent. So are we switching cells? Will they use a different one then? Or has that been talked about with that proponent?
Director Thompson?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Connick. We have discussed that with the particular company, and there's no conflict.
Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Also, with the other development that's happening in that area, is this also going to be an access road for BioRefinex? Do they not have a through road that went in
I think that I can answer that one, and definitely no, it will not be. But if Director Thompson has something to add to that.
Actually, Mayor Creasy, you're correct. BioRefinex is a separate development, and they'll have their own accesses off of 34th Street. It will not be a shared access for that development.
But was there not in the plan showing that there was access to 53rd Avenue from BioRefinex from the third, whatever that access road is? I thought they could drive straight around.
Unless we hear differently, not that I recall, but there's.
Okay,
Not to say
all right. That's my mistake.
No. So I guess when this plan originally came forward, I know myself, I don't know if the rest of the council feels that it was seen as perhaps maybe being a bit of a benefit doing the road access together. But when we find out that we can actually do the 2 separate ones and keep them separate, personally, I like that better. I'm not really in favor of eliminating the recreation altogether, although I'm not necessarily thrilled with the location of a park there in an industrial area. However, I think that over time it can be made to be rather nice. I liked it and workable. I like the idea of having a location for those groups to be able to come together and perhaps put forward some ideas and partner with other groups to produce a park that would be more to their liking than what the existing one does. So I like that part of it. The whole idea of having another entrance off of the road onto, or off of 34th for the cell, I mean, that's primarily just for a winter use thing anyway, so I don't see that as being a particular hazard or anything. Harrison, if we can do it for less money, I guess I see that as being positive. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So for what it's worth, I'll just, I support option 2 as presented by administration. So I think that's the best viable, smartest option, and it does save us some considerable money. So I think it's terrific.
The one question that I had, Director Thompson, with respect to option 2, so the entrance in there at the end of it, it looks like it's built out. Is that a modest parking area indicated there? It's rather difficult to see with such small print.
Yes, that would be our intention, to build a parking area that's modest initially, that could be expanded north or west in time with additional demand. But certainly our intention would be a modest parking area. I think it's something in the order of 15 or 20 stalls, something like that.
Okay, so modest, but I mean, there's certainly adequate room to turn around and come back out. It's not like it's
Certainly.
unusable. Okay. Councillor Jacobson.
Sure. I'll just move the council endorses snow storage facility east recreation area access option 2 as presented.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we will vote on that. All those in favor?
Interesting question.
I see none opposed. Actually, I pushed the wrong button. I checked for time, and Siri was going to vote too. That was unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Connick, did you have something additional, or were you just making sure I saw your vote? Very good. I can't even get time unless I put in my code. So it is 5:27. I think that rather than taking on any additional items here, we will move towards our public hearing. Coordinator Pettibone, can you hear me?
Yes, Mayor Creasy.
Very good. I just, before we're just got a couple of minutes here, and I just, before we start, I was going to ask, do we have some submissions with regards to this particular item tonight?
I just checked email. There's nothing there, and we haven't received anything previously either. So no submissions.
Okay, very good. I don't think that starting in a couple of minutes is necessarily going to have a significant impact on that then. By my clock, it says it's 5:29, so I will proceed with bylaw 482 public hearing. And I declare the statutory public hearing for bylaw 482 open, and that this hearing is held pursuant to sections 7, 230, 606, and 606.1, subsection 1 of the MGA RSA 2000, chapter M26, and requests the legislative coordinator to confirm the purpose of this public hearing, and that the statutory public hearing notice was advertised in the local newspaper, and that any written submissions received and not included in the public hearing agenda package are read in the record.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Council and Mayor Creasy, the purpose of this public hearing is to allow the general public to provide input and express their views on the advertising bylaw 482, which was given first reading November 23rd. Bylaw 482 proposes to provide one or more methods, including electronic means, for advertising proposed bylaws, meetings, public hearings, elections, or other things in a manner that likely brings all future items to the attention of substantially all city residents. For section 606 of the MGA, requirements for advertising, public hearing notice was advertised as shown on page 3 of the agenda in the Lacombe Express Thursday, December 31st, 2020, and Thursday, January 7th, 2021. And just to confirm, there were no written submissions received.
Thank you very much. That was part of our reasoning for going through the type of meeting that we're having this evening. However, just so everyone that's watching at home does not think that we are not following the MGA requirements, I will say that all persons giving oral presentations are to clearly state their name, and presentations are to be brief and to the point. The order of the statutory public hearing presentations our administrative staff or designate. Those in favor, followed by those opposed, and then any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard, of which we realize there's none, but this is the format that we are required to use. So who in our administrative staff is going to speak to this item?
Director Duke.
Director Juke, are you on? The floor is yours.
I am, Mayor Creasy. So this is for the purposes of the public hearing, I believe, is where we're at.
That's
This
right.
proposed, thank you. This proposed bylaw will add the option for the municipality to advertise bylaw resolutions, meetings, or public hearings electronically, in addition to the current methods of newsprint media publishing and mail or other direct delivery. And of course, that will still allow us to meet statutory requirements by utilizing one or any number of those three methods. And that's the purpose of the bylaw.
Thank you. We have heard earlier, we have no submissions, but I will once again ask our legislative coordinator, do we have anybody speaking or wishing to speak in favor?
None that I have here. Record of.
Thank you. And any opposed?
None opposed.
And any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard?
And no further registrants.
Very good. Does anyone from council have any questions before we continue? Very good. This may be one of the shorter public hearings. It is 5:32 and I declare that the public hearing for bylaw 482 is now closed.
So then we'd be moving right to the bylaw itself, 42. The Director Duke would be presenting for second reading, Mayor Creasy.
Correct. And that is item 5.3 on our agendas. Director Duke, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and council. Before council tonight is second reading of the advertising bylaw number 482. This bylaw received first reading on November 23rd, 2020, and has also had the benefit of a public hearing tonight as mandated by the MGA. The proposed bylaw, as mentioned, will add the option for the municipality to utilize electronic publications to advertise a bylaw, resolution, meeting, or public hearing, in addition to the current methods of newsprint media publishing and mail or other direct delivery methods, and still meet statutory requirements of the MGA. Administration is recommending second reading tonight, as well as third reading if agreeable. And with that, I'll take any questions that council may have.
Thanks, Director Duke. Councillor Goetsen?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that council give second reading to advertising bylaw 482.
Thank you for that. Let's not everybody speak at once on this item. But a little ironic that we're discussing this particular item. There's no submissions electronically, but so be it. No one wishes to be heard at this time? I will call the question. All those in favor? None opposed?
I'm in favor.
Who's no?
I believe that was Councillor Connick.
That's Ruben, yeah.
He was in favor, he said.
Just because I didn't quite hear you, Councillor Connick, you said you were in favor?
Correct.
Thank you. So that is unanimous. Do we have any interest in a third reading, or would you prefer to leave that to another night? Councillor Jacobson.
I'll move that council give third reading to advertising bylaw 42.
Very good. Anybody wish to speak regarding the third reading? I will call the question then. All those in favor? Councillor Kotick?
In favor.
Thank you. That was unanimous as well. Thank you very much. All right, the first item on request for decision was the subdivision authorities bylaw 228 and the updates for it. Director Thompson, you prepared to go through that item now?
I am. Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Recent amendments to the land use bylaw 400 modify the Development Authority and Municipal Planning Commission powers when considering development applications. With the approval of those amendments, changes to this bylaw 400-228 are required, and therefore it is before council tonight for first reading. The proposed changes in this bylaw include development officers are authorized to decide on variances of up to 15%, and development officers are authorized to decide on applications referred to adjacent landowners and where no concerns or objections have been received. There is some clarity around the direction and responsibility for the conduct of a meeting, as well as in Schedule A, and then some minor formatting corrections throughout. So again, tonight, this is for first reading for council, and certainly if there are any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you for that. Anyone? Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that council give first reading to bylaw 228.3.
Thank you very much. Anyone need any clarification before we consider the question? All those in favor? Councillor Kotick?
In favor.
Thank you. And if there is any desire for discussion, we might want to consider a second reading. If not, it's up to you. I see no hands. Therefore, we will move along to item 5.4, the social master plan phase 1. Director Duke, do you care to present that item, please?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council tonight is a proposed scope for the city's social master plan. In 2018, council identified a social master plan as a high priority strategic goal and provided a total of $70,000 in funding, which is MSI funded, to develop the plan. Administration had a look at the entire project and decided to phase the project to first identify areas of social sustainability in the city with the most urgent need or the greatest strengths on which to focus further research, so that the social master plan that resulted would be of most effective and efficient. In the attached scoping report, Morehouse and Associates, which were the consultants for phase 1, identified 11 potential focus areas for council consideration following a process of engagement with existing service providers, statistical analysis of the city of Lacombe, and a review of current municipal plans, goals, and services. With a council-approved scope for the social master plan, administration will be able to launch phase 2, utilizing the remaining social master plan budget, which is currently at $44,800, potentially with the same consultant for continuity or by going out to request for proposals again. Administration further notes that the city is aware of and as is following closely the Premier's Council on Charities and Civil Society recent report, which is also a type of master plan that the province has engaged with, recognizing that COVID-19 has impacted greatly the ability of civil societies to function, and also at the same time increasing social needs. So they're taking a close look at the situation in the province. And we think that it rather is keeping step with the social master plan that we might develop here. So we are looking at that and are reviewing the report and the potential funding that may flow from that. So at this point, the report is being presented to council. You will see on page 3 of the RFD is where the list of potential focus areas begins. They're numbered 1 through 11. And we're proposing that a potential method of choosing the particular focus areas may be to eliminate any of the identified 11 that council does not feel are as important as others, on which administration will then focus development of goals and actions. And again, the list begins on page 3. So with that, I'll take any questions council may have.
Thank you, Director Duke. Councillor Hoekstra, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I have a fairly extensive reply to this report, and but I have two main overarching comments that I would like to make. One concerns the timing. When we were doing our strategic plan, I don't think we wanted a social master plan. At least I didn't want a social master plan that was developed during a pandemic. I think that this report represents situations in our city that aren't typical. Like even some of the comments that were made about problems that are in the city. Yes? Did someone say so? Oh, sorry. I thought someone called that, like it said, seniors and technology, that seniors are having problems with technology. I think that was only highlighted due to the pandemic, and I'm not sure that that's something that we would want to look at. So my first comment is, I think the timing isn't great. Secondly, I say this carefully. I think this is a very, very poorly written report. I have spent a lot of time on the weekend reading it. In 2019, Wetaskiwin had a report written, and it was kind of my template of my expectations, and this report did not meet that template. This report does not seem to uniquely represent Lacombe. When I read the report, I didn't feel like I was reading particularly about my city. And that concerns me greatly because a master plan we should be able to see some intimate connections to our city. And I didn't see that. There was input only from one sector. And I know that this is a scoping report, but it concerns me when there was only input sought from service providers, because service providers have a unique perspective on the needs of a community and don't necessarily have all the perspectives that we would like to see. And in particular, I happen to know a lot of these service providers, and a good lot of them do not even live in our city. So I think that the authors of this report should have connected with people who live in this city. Then there was some things about comments about that the family makeup has changed. Well, when I look at those graphs, I do not see any change that needed to be highlighted. Then it also referred to health indicators. So there are 12 to 14 different kind of health indicators that they talked about. They only highlighted something to do with income, and they didn't explain what health indicators were. And I think that this report should be something that anybody could pick up and understand. But when you don't have a background of understanding what health indicators are, what difference does it make that income is the same as the province, that in Lacombe? Then they also highlighted emergency room visits, and I thought that was highly unusual because it's not part of the health indicators. But on the flip side, it's okay if they highlight it, but explain why they highlighted it. And if anybody who lives in Lacombe has sat in emergency, you would know anecdotally that maybe we have more emergency visits, not because of our population. I have sat in emergency and literally 75% of the people in the room were from Red Deer. So why did we highlight that? Then in the appendix, I'm still on my overarching comment that this is a poorly written report. In the appendix, these reoccurring themes, they were comparing documents. And I think what they were trying to tell us is that they found these reoccurring themes. But it was not easy to follow at all. I only kind of got the gist of it after literally reading it the third time. So anyhow, I'm very uncomfortable using this report to go forward. I'm not saying that the 11 focus areas are incorrect. I think because they're kind of like, they could apply to most communities. So I think those focus areas can be something we can look at. My only concern then, well, first of all, the timing's bad. It's not a great report. But then it leads to my third comment. I do realize there's provincial funding coming. And so that would worry us that we might not be prepared. I guess I still feel confident that if some new provincial funding comes, we can respond appropriately as a city and access people in our community who can give us some wisdom about how to access this provincial funding. So I personally would like to say I'm disappointed, but I feel like this is an agenda item, or this is a part of our strategic plan that we should put on hold. And I say that carefully because our term is almost up. And so we don't have any time to do it, but it's just not the right time. And yeah, that's it.
Director, or Councillor Hoekstra, for someone that has been intimately involved in a directly related field for which this is, I especially appreciate your comments. Thank you for that. CAO Gotti.
So thank you, Councillor Hoekstra, and then Mayor and members of council. Councillor Hoekstra and I did have a chance to talk briefly about this over the weekend, and so some of my comments are going to be repeats for her, but might be valuable for the rest of council. I actually am very much in agreement with a lot of Councillor Hoekstra's points, and I would say part of the responsibility, or a good part of the responsibility, I have to put on my own shoulders, because this, of course, it's not an area that I have a lot of experience or was able to look back into sort of past experiences with the social master planning. So when we looked at it, we looked at some other comparable documents, and I guess maybe in defense of this document a little bit, I would say if you're comparing the Wetaskiwin social master plan, I'm anticipating that that's the full social master plan that you're seeing there, rather than phase one. When we look at a phase one just scoping exercise, something like Sylvan Lakes, we do actually see it fairly similar to this. Having said that, we absolutely agree that this was an Edmonton view applied to Lacombe, and we went back several times, and I also am being careful about my comments. We went back several times with the consultant and reached a point where we were confident that the improvements being made with further drafts were incremental and not substantially likely to end with a document that we were all really satisfied with as a social master plan. My recommendation actually does differ from the posted agenda recommendation to choose 8 of the 11 focus areas. Should you choose to move on with the completion of the social master plan, we do recommend choosing 8 of the 11 recommended focus areas, and we will proceed to phase 2 of the social master plan. However, I actually think not only are you being influenced heavily during a pandemic by unusual circumstances, I think that any funds that are forthcoming for social services and social supports are likely to be distributed through the lens that the Premier's Council on Social Services and Civil Society is looking at as needed services within the province. I don't think that spending an additional $45,000 on a plan to spend some money that, if it comes, it's going to have some clear targeted objectives that come with it, it's going to have strings attached, is actually a good use of the municipality's money at this time. I think you would be better off supporting taxpayers through the support of existing programs. Look at where the existing social supports are in your community and expand those for the time being, rather than going ahead with a phase 2 of this plan. So having said that, my recommendation actually with this item is not to move to phase 2, but rather to direct administration to look for opportunities to partner with some of the existing social agencies and civil societies within Lacombe and look for ways to repurpose and reallocate these resources that have been dedicated to a phase 2 into actual programming for relief for residents.
Thank you, Chief Gotti. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll echo Council Extras and the CEO's comments, even like, for example, referring to question 4 and some of the comments brought forward. I'm kind of frustrated that I think some of these comments are unjustified. I feel that it's kind of a cut and paste report on a lot of the information that we already know. And to have some, I agree with to have some of our agencies review it, because it's a lack of information what we already know. There's some inaccurate information for rental rates, and it's kind of frustrating. And possibly better collaboration between our social service organizations within the city. I agree, but there's a lot of wonderful organizations throughout the city that do a lot for people in need, and no question we can always try to identify. But I think the bottom line is a lot of people could have the question of ask for help, because there's a lot of very successful, generous agencies and organizations in the city to help. And it's I don't see the value in this thus of yet. I think like with CEO Gowdy's recommendation to have our agencies review it, move forward, I don't see any value in moving along for the next step to further spend our tax dollars right now, because I get kind of frustrated with studies when our administration has the expertise and the knowledge of some of the information we get back for some of these studies. Is we have some tremendous abilities within this building to and within the city to do this ourselves, and it may be a time factor, but I don't support moving forward.
Thank you. On a similar vein, for myself, when I read, so that is my warning here, just to remind Councillor Jacobson of a commitment that you asked me to tell you about. Hopefully you're able to join us later on. Thank you. Where was I? So as I read this, so just to start out, I wanted to remind everybody the first couple sentences in the executive summary of this entire document, which quite honestly, I found some of it rather interesting, not being an expert in the field, as some of the information was great to read about. But anyway, it says the city of Lacombe aims to provide a safe and viable community that allows its current 14,000, say, residents and any future residents to feel socially engaged, connected, and well. To accomplish this, we've commissioned the development of a social master plan. So for myself, I find that particularly problematic, given that the very people that we have in this community that are extremely capable and well-intentioned, and certainly have proven in the past to be rather good at lobbying us for support, as well as provincial and federal entities. I don't want to say cheated, but basically we're coming up with a study here that shows us how to direct resources of which we don't have. And I find that to be a little offensive for the individuals that do the good work that they do in our community. So for that reason, and some of the others that are stated tonight, I think that we could perhaps direct not only funds, but staff time and efforts in a different direction, rather than proceeding with further advancing this plan, which I don't think accurately describes or portrays our community. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. When we were getting ready to discuss this, my initial thought that I wanted to share with council is just highlighting this one specific line that's actually an answer under Q7. I think it's on page 27 of the report. It says, do you have any other advice or comments that might be helpful to the city as they work on the home social master plan? And the very first response by a stakeholder was, the city needs to be in tune with what residents' actual need and wants, not what they believe residents should need or want. And so I was just, that really stood out to me. We were being asked tonight to potentially, limit down from 11 identified areas to 8 in one night. Here you go, here's the report, go for it. I'm not, trying to, attack administration or something like that. That's not my point. My point is that something like this requires time, it requires input, especially in a COVID situation that's even more limited because of the way things are. But I'm not saying that I don't agree with a master social plan. I actually think that it's a good idea in the long run. I still support the idea of it. But I would echo what Councillor Hoekstra and others have said about it being not the right time right now. And I would say that it just, the way that we proceed from phase 1 to phase 2, should we ever get there, I think needs to involve hearing from residents and the users, because we've got, service providers that have put input in, but we haven't heard from the residents. And my goodness, if we go ahead and do a whole process and then it turns out that that's not what the city wanted, like as far as city is in the residents wanted, then that would just be a crime. So anyway, that was just my only comment that I wanted to make. And yeah, I guess I would echo the idea that I would prefer that remaining funds be redirected to make a difference now that we already know of those issues, and not make any sweeping changes at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I really appreciate everybody's comments tonight here too. And I support what CEO Gowdy is suggesting, and I probably will make a motion just to accept this as information. But I did want to say, and this is really not great for the next council, but how do we keep the idea of a social master plan on the agenda? I would like to somehow task administration to bring it up again, if that makes sense, because we might not all be here next time. And I think realistically, this is something to be done in a couple of years, maybe once our community has settled into a new routine. So I don't know if anybody has an idea around that, about how do we keep it on the agenda, and maybe that's not even my right to ask for that, but I would be disappointed if we lost sight of having a master plan, because I do think it is helpful to hire someone to come into the city to look at who we are, rather than only using the agencies that are there, because each agency has their own lens to look at the city. So there is some benefit in having an expert or someone coming in to look at it. But anyhow, I don't know if anybody has that idea of how to keep it on the agenda.
Thanks, Councillor Hoekstra. So, Councillor Connick, did you have some input? Or
Yeah, I was just weighing my comments here for a minute before I put my hand up, but my only comments were, I think, so this is just a phase 1. Like, I think the input we're looking for would come from phase 2, from the actual citizens of our community. That was my kind of read of this. And the focus area groups, I like those focus area groups. And to me, that's where we get the input from the citizens. Maybe I'm misreading it. So the suggestion, maybe we're not going to get that. Well, we get that, I think, as we implement it going forward. That being said, I agree that the timing isn't right, although I don't know when the timing will be right. We could be looking 2, 3, 4 years down the road. I mean, COVID is not anywhere near, over as we speak. And my only other comment is I agree that I'm not so sure the money should be reallocated to, I think it should be banked to use towards the social master plan. My fear is that if you disperse that money to those who could need it, that the expectation is that money will come every year. That's my only fear with doing that. But otherwise, I agree, maybe this needs to be put off, and ultimately it'll be up to the next council to bring that forward. I respect Councillor Hutra's comments that she'd like to see it somehow carried forward, but that's outside of what we can do, unfortunately, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Potok. I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation that something of this may come forward in the future. However, for us to somehow compel a future council, I think is a bit of a reach. But I mean, social issues are not about to disappear, I don't think, anytime soon. And I expect that this will come up again. But the general consensus that I'm hearing is there's not a lot of support to continue down this road to further expand a document that I haven't heard a great deal of praise about. Is that a fair, short summary? Something to think about anyway. Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just have a question regarding the funding. You're talking about spending that money in an area to support our groups in town here that are doing this very important work for our citizens. But is that not also the funding that was already given to us, additional funding from the provincial government for COVID issues? Could that money be used towards that and then bank this money for the future phase 2 of this plan later on? Like the money that was given to us by the provincial government for COVID relief?
That's kind of a different item. I don't know the juggling where the funds go.
Well, yeah, I'm just
anything, but Chief Gotti?
So the original funding source for this item was the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, the operating component, and we will be able to reallocate that to other projects within your operating budget. I believe what Councillor Gullickson is referring to is the Municipal Operating Support Transfer, which is COVID support funding for your operations budget. And that will be reflected in terms of the year end for 2020 as a surplus to your 2020 operating budget.
So we have no more access to that money for COVID relief for support?
Chief Gotti?
Well, no, you will have full access to it once it's in your operating. So your budget and taxation preparation policy directs any surplus funds generated in the operating generated in your operating budget to be directed to the operating reserve. And so that will add whatever surplus you have in 2020 to your operating reserve, which you can use for whatever purpose you deem necessary.
So some of the comments I heard through our discussion here is that there's concerns regarding the additional problems that have been brought on by COVID itself, regarding family violence, different things like that, and putting strain on our social system. Would we be able to utilize the funds to support those groups?
Were you directing that towards?
Yes,
yeah. I don't know. It will be more clear as we enter Q2 of 2021. As it stands right now, the province has directed those funds to be used for lost revenues and increased expenses related to COVID. I would say that it is likely that if you as a council, not likely, sorry, I'm quite confident now that I'm thinking about it. If you as a council say there are specific social ills that have been worsened or created by COVID, and you're directing funds or resources into programs to combat those specific ills that have arisen from COVID, then yes, that would be a valid expense. But that's really what I think the expenditure test, if you will, is going to come down to for that municipal operating sustainability transfer. It's about whether or not you as a council believe that the funds are being used for bona fide sort of COVID impacts.
Because I do agree that this plan to do it now is very difficult with the unique situation we're in. And it's the additional funding that's available that was already allocated for this isn't going to go directly to those organizations. I think we should look at that extra funding we got to support them. I think there's a strain that is coming yet on these organizations such as FCSS and other support groups in town.
Chief Gotti.
So we did actually send a letter advising some of our partnering agencies that if they are experiencing impacts related to COVID, such as the need for additional programming or extra expenses or reduced revenue impacts, that they should be keeping track of that. And then when they come to talk for budget requests to council, to make sure that you're aware of that. And that's going to put you in the best position to know at that time what your own costs are and how much of that municipal operating sustainability transfer you need for sort of city lost revenues versus what is actually surplus that could be used towards other community groups like you're talking about, Councillor Gullickson. So we have anticipated that, and I think you'll be in a good position to do that. Although I have to admit the municipal election does complicate things a bit, of course, because you will be these groups will be presenting to you, and then may present or the budget may be decided ultimately by a different makeup of council.
Thank you. Anyone else? I cannot see two of our councillors. Councillor Hoekstra.
I would like to make a motion that we accept this document as information.
Thank you. Councillor Clonic, did you have, oh, there you are. Did you have anything? Very good. So double check. Any additional input from anyone here? So we do have a motion to accept as information. I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? I see none, therefore it's unanimous. Thanks, everyone. Now, always with the public agenda and changes for times when we jumped around, I've got marked off all of my items under section 5, request for decision. Everybody agree with that? Next up is our information portion of the meeting, and we will start out with administrative reports. Chief Gotti, your report, please.
I'm sorry, it must be because of the electronic attendance, but I just wanted to confirm that for sure, item 5.1, the subdivision authorities bylaw updates were given second and third reading. Did I?
No, they were not. It was given
First
just first reading to put on the table.
I'm sorry, that's what it was. Okay.
And will be brought forward at a further date for additional discussion.
Thank you. My apologies. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Okay, so moving to my monthly significant events report. Of course, the city has remained at enhanced status in terms of COVID-19 since my last report, and there's 43 active community cases at the time of this report. There is an outbreak reported in the Lacombe Action Group, a group home. However, we've confirmed with the local managers that actually that outbreak is in a Red Deer facility, but because the Action Group's operating address is here in Lacombe for their main office, they're actually incorrectly reported as Lacombe cases rather than Red Deer cases. So that actually accounts for about 10 to 15 of those cases. But nonetheless, we have seen ongoing case fluctuations within the city, and it remains a concern for us. We have not activated the ECC at this time, and we have no recommendation for declaring a state of local emergency. Moving on to the administrative portion of the report, Happy to report that we have selected a procurement methodology for the Public Works building, which will allow us to move forward in a similar fashion to the Main Street project and arena renovation project. In both of those instances and this, we've been able to see real value in bringing on a contractor, a construction general contractor, very early in the design process to make sure that we're getting accurate pricing and the best design information for constructability. We've also selected the DARP consultation focus groups, and I'm pleased to report that it represents a broad cross-section of businesses downtown. And I think we're going to have really good engagement on that project. The utility bylaw is under review. You've set a committee meeting in March to look at that. And one project that you maybe have seen some of the action around town is a sign replacement project. So we have just over 200 signs to replace around town, these being things like wayfinding, trailhead signs, playground naming signs. The material has been acquired and we're well underway with the replacement of those signs around the community, which will just give a nice freshen up to some of the, in some cases, 20 to 25-year-old signs we have. Work is also underway for the red tape reduction report, which is required February 1st by the province. And of course, you'll get a copy of that here as council as well, because it highlights some of the good work that has gone on over this term in reducing red tape. We had hoped to have a little more information about our water use investigation, but we ran into a couple of GIS technical issues for this meeting, so we will have that at your next meeting. We've got some great information there that I think is going to give us a bit of a roadmap to look at ways we can improve that utility's financial health over the coming years. And on the financial side, I have a great news that the tax payments this year, which we had worried would be quite a bit worse than previous years, appears that those fears were unfounded, with around 97% collection to date. So that's right on target with where we've been in past years. And actually our total arrears is about half of where it was this time last year. So some good news there. And just pleased to report on behalf of HR that they've just recently submitted applications for about $100,000 of grant funding, which would be great for some of our summer programs.
Thank you, Chief Gowdy. Councillor Kotick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just in your report there, Matt, or CEO Gowdy, you mentioned failing water meters. Prematurely failing water meters. Sorry. What are we talking about here? Are we talking like a dozen or 100? It kind of worries me a little bit. Maybe you can't give me a number, but I'm just curious.
Hundreds. Yes.
Hundreds. Wow.
Yes. So we're looking. That's what we're looking at right now, is to see, is there some correlation between the serial numbers? Was it a bad batch? Was it a bad install? Maybe they were installed poorly or incorrectly. Maybe they were input into our system incorrectly. And so we are trying to hunt down what the actual issue is, but we have had to replace many water meters already. And we're trying to get them as quickly as possible. We are talking, without going too far into the issue, because we will have a report next week, we are talking to our insurer and a few other avenues just to see if there is some mitigation that the city can look at. But certainly the best mitigation is to get the inoperable meters replaced as fast as possible and get them billing correctly. And we're working with the installers for that right now.
Thank you. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Also, same question, well, same issue. Are we looking for compensation back from the customers? Because it would be approximately $50 a month, I think, is my figuring per meter on average for residential, would be lost revenue. Are we looking at collecting any of that?
That certainly is an option under your utility bylaw. You have the ability, when an error occurs, to go back, I believe, up to a year. that will be something that you will have to consider, and we'll present you options for doing that, for considering that at your next meeting for sure. You mentioned a $50 a month.
I just looked at a residential billing, and if they're non-registering meters, the consumption would be approximately $50 a month for a residential, on the low side even.
Yes.
And if
Yes,
it's non-registering, I certainly have a lot of questions about this, but I will leave it till the next meeting, which I think is going to be interesting, because in my feelings, I don't know how to go away this long. Because I think with meters, one of the most important things regarding meters is non-registering. And how the system allowed that to happen, I don't know. Well, we'll ask that question next meeting.
Yeah, I think we all look forward to the full report for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you. One other item, Chief Gotti, was with respect to the Public Works building. We were going to be looking at some preliminary layouts and whatnot. Are those going to be forthcoming to council?
No, at this time, we have not engaged any design consultant, but certainly once we have the preliminary design with the layouts, we'll be bringing those to council for sure. But forthcoming, I think would be a bit optimistic. They will be coming, just not forthcoming in the near future, I guess.
Very good. Anyone else? Thanks, Chief Gotti. We'll move down to 6.2, council mailbox. Capital funding, or capital project funding letter from the county on November 27th. Any questions or concerns there? Any highlights you'd like to bring up with respect to those items, Chief Gotti?
Nope, I think they're self-explanatory.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I should highlight the FCM membership. This is something that council chose not to move ahead with in the past. And they have, of course, requested that you reconsider that. So please keep that in mind as we look to future budget deliberations.
Thank you. 6.3. Item A, Municipal Planning Commission minutes from November 18th. Does anyone have any questions or concerns with that set of minutes that was forwarded? I cannot see our councillors that are joining us electronically. Hoekstra and Connick, if you have anything, please speak up. And the Lacombe Police Commission minutes from November 19th, 6.3b. Anything there from anyone? Hearing none, we will move into councillor reports. I have nothing to report at this time. Councillor Culliton.
I have nothing to report.
Councillor Ross.
I have no report.
Councillor Hibbs.
No.
Councillor Connick.
No, sir, I have nothing to report.
Thank you. And Councillor Hoekstra.
I have nothing to report.
You'd almost think that it was festive season, it was just over or something. Very good. I think that concludes the information section of our agenda. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Hibbs.
I'll make the motion to receive the information as information.
Thank you. Everyone's favorite motion. And I hear nothing from either at home, so we're good to vote on that. All in favor? None opposed? Councillor Hoekstra, you're good? Very good, thank you. And our minutes from December 7th. Item number 7. Do we have any revisions or omissions to go through on that item? Anyone? Not seeing a bunch of input, so could I have a motion, please? Councillor Connick?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. We have no notices of motion this evening. For the public's consumption, we do have two in-camera items under section